I am now honored to call in our good friend, Dr. John Ashton, who's going to take us on a, how can I say, in a tour to Sandfly in Tasmania, because there's something really interesting that exists there. But first and foremost, Happy New Year to you, Dr. John. It's great to have you on board with us again this year.
Yes, Happy New Year. Yes, hope it's a great year for us all.
Thank you very much.
For sure.
So, Dr. John, where is Sandfly in Tasmania, and why is it special?
Well, it's interesting. Until you contacted me about the large fossil deposits there, I wasn't aware that it was special, because I actually lived at Sandfly for about 7 years myself. So it's a small little rural area about 25 kilometres south of Hobart. Just 5 or 6 kilometres inland from Margate on the D'Entrecasteaux Channel there. So, yes, just south of Hobart.
Yeah, because when people talk about Sandfly, if you look on the internet for Sandfly, Tasmania, they'll say, hey, it's a picturesque, semi-rural town. There's some mining history there, but nobody talks about fossils. So what kind of fossils do we find there, and why are they, interesting?
Yes, well, I think they're mainly just interesting to geologists, but the property, we had a 70-acre property there, and we had a dolerite quarry as part of the quarry. So Sandfly is an area where there's a mixture of sedimentary rocks, but quite a lot of volcanic activity in the past, where you had particularly doleritic sills there, horizontal flows of lava, and dikes, vertical flow. So there's quite a lot of that material, and there was certainly a large outcrop of that on a ridge on one of our properties.
Just a curiosity, Dr. John, how do you identify these lava material? Is it black? Is it white? Can a unlearned person or a lay person just look at that and say, hey, this has been lava in the past? How do you identify that?
Well, look, no, in a couple of minutes on the over the radio, no, it's not an easy task.
Okay. I was just curious about that.
Because and one of the reasons is some Ingis rocks are very hard and some are quite soft. So quite near here where I live is Nora Head with the lighthouse, and if you walk around the rock shelf there, you'll notice that there are these troughs, these areas where there's a section of rock maybe a metre wide that is being eroded away much faster than the surrounding rock, which is sandstone and conglomerate. And that rock that's eroded more faster, again, is an igneous dike, a volcanic intrusion. So it's softer rock. In the case of the dolerite, it's a harder rock. They can be all different colours. Granite, for example, can be white, pink, grey. But also, of course, heat-treated or what we call metamorphosed sedimentary rocks can also look to the inexperienced eye as a volcanic rock, in that it can be hard and semi-crystalline and so forth. So it is a tricky thing. I think one of the things to point out, though, that in the area there, I had to actually look up the area and look up the geology of that particular area. And there's a few really good reports online with regard to the geology of the Sandfly area there. And there are these deposits of marine organisms. So you've got Panastella, and they're a very common fossil that is found in many places around the world. They tend to be sort of like tiny little lumps spread out like a fan of flowers, or an array of, it's hard to describe, sort of like, they're very tiny little dots, maybe another way to describe it, a bit like braille. And what these are tiny organisms, I guess a bit similar to coral, in that they're a stationary organism. They grow out, they have a lot of little tentacles that come out, but they're very tiny. And so the fossils are the hard parts of these animals mainly. And so one of the comments was that, why are these huge amounts here? Well, just like you get sort of coral reefs and you have these organisms growing together, they grow in large amounts together. The other shells that are found there are your common bivalve brachiopod type shells, a number of different varieties there. So essentially what it's saying is it's a marine environment. And these marine environments that we find on land are very strong evidence of the global flood. And I think one of the most spectacular aspects of it is that we find these sort of seashell things up on in the Himalayas or the Himalayas, up on Mount Everest, these sort of things. We know, for example, in Peru, up in the mountains in Peru, they've found hundreds of fossils of whales, dolphins, sharks, these sort of things up in the mountains. So what this is telling us is that the surface of the Earth has undergone massive changes in the past. And when we look at the surface of the Earth, we know that the Earth has gone through a massive extinction event caused by water. Now, the conventional geology textbooks say that there's about 4 or 5 global extinction events by water, and they put them tens to hundreds of millions of years apart. Mm-hmm. But we know from the evidence that it must have been one event at a very short period of time. And the reasons for this is that when we look at the layers that have been laid down, such as in the Grand Canyon and this sort of thing, we've got these massive layers that are, when you look at the Grand Canyon, sort of a mile deep and places and so forth, we've got all these layers that are conformably laid down on top of one another. Now, what that means is there's no sign of erosion in between. There's no signs of bioturbulation in between the layers. And so that is where you have small organisms, worms and this sort of thing make little burrows and this sort of thing. There's no sign of that. There's just these layers are just laid down fresh on top of one another. There's either fossils in there like buried animals or there isn't. And this is a global event. And so what it says is that...
May I say one thing, Dr. John? Because when I grew up or when I started to learn more about the evidences for creation, people would often call the Grand Canyon as a majestic evidence of that. But I have found out that I have seen so many patterns just like that outside of the Grand Canyon. Even in the United States, I was there recently. I went to the Red Rock National Park. There's tons of patterns similar to that one in Brazil. I think that all over the globe, we find these sediment on top of sediment, different layers with no pattern, with no evidence of erosion whatsoever in them. It's not just in one place. I think it's worldwide, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, it's worldwide. And this is powerful evidence that these dates that they put on to separate these layers can't be correct. And so, but the important thing is that we have the evidence, it's very clear, of global extinction events worldwide. Now, the other, and they also must have happened in rapid succession. Other evidence for this is the cases where you see very, very tight folding of the layers, where during this particular time there's been uplifts. The layers have been bent, and they're bent, sometimes on a really sharp angles, like an S, something like that. And again, this could only happen while the sediments are fresh and soft, not once they'd hardened. If that happened, they just crack and break and so forth. So look, there's heaps of evidence that way. They're overwhelming evidence for the global flood as described in the Bible. Now, some people again say, well, hang on, when you look at the geological column, you've got, mainly marine organisms down the bottom, like you don't find rabbits buried down with trilobites, this sort of thing. But we understand, of course, that it talks in Genesis that God made the sea creatures. So there were seas right at the beginning as well. And so essentially the geologic column is a representation of what you would expect if animals were buried. So you'd expect the marine organisms already at the bottom, and the larger and more agile, more sort of versatile animals further up in the column, and that's what we see. But the column is actually a lot more mixed up than we're often led to believe. For example, dinosaurs and mammals coexisted. I saw a spectacular example of this one time when I was staying in Hawaii for a holiday and visited the museum there. And there was an international display there, and they had a fossil of a mammal who had eaten a baby dinosaur. And the remains, the skeleton of the dinosaur was in the stomach. Yeah.
I've never seen it. That's incredible.
Yeah, so I actually saw the fossil. It was on display. There's a write-up about it in Nature, but it's not like there's heaps of examples of that, and heaps of examples of when they look at these fossil beds, you have all these animals mixed up. For example, sometimes where they find the trees that have been buried, and they find sort of land-dwelling animals sort of hidden in the trees, mixed up with marine animals that got buried with them and all mixed up in the hollow tree.
Wow.
So we need to understand this, that the fossil record, while there are these beds at times that have, like in the Morrison Formation that occupies, probably massive area, maybe a third, covers about a third or maybe more of the United States. It's where they find a lot of the dinosaur fossils. So we got this massive area, right, that is full of these buried dinosaurs. Now, sometimes we do find articulated skeletons, that is where they're all joined together. But often the bits of the dinosaur are broken up, right, as well. And these tend to be sorted in, so you have the bigger bones down the bottom and the smaller fragments up higher, just as you'd expect.
Dr. This is really fascinating, which also reminds me one thing. Remember that you spoke to us a little bit about that excellent documentary, Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed? And it's interesting to see how much prejudice academia has when evaluating the evidence for a global flood in the body of fossils that we have. But I actually have good news here, Dr. John, because I can send a link to our listeners if they are interested to learn more about it, learn more about the origins, and particularly about how academia treats. Why is it so many scholars have so much prejudice when evaluating and analyzing evidence like the ones that you have presented that point towards a global flood, just like the Bible described? If you'd like to get the link to that documentary, if you'd like to learn more about that topic, you can text me here with the hashtag expelled to 0491 064 and I'll send the link to you. Dr. John, we have to move on, but I just want to thank you so much for bringing us. It's quite fascinating that such a small, tiny place, Sandfly, can tell us so much about the origins, not only the origins, but the history, the geological history of our planet, and particularly that it is so aligned with what the Bible describes.
Certainly, yes.
Dr. John, thank you very much for your participation. We're looking forward to have you again with us next time.